wide-angle X-ray scattering have conclusively confirmed the shroud's first-century origins, while also detecting microscopic particles of soil and mineral compounds that are unique only to the ancient Jerusalem area.
Han Meditations.
Hello guys, I am Han, this is Kelly.
Hi everyone.
We are Han Meditations. We're back with another interesting video now. This is going to be a very special, interesting video because have you guys heard of this? The Shroud of Turin? Have you heard of this, Kelly?
Never.
So apparently it's a shroud that is imprinted with the image of Jesus Christ. And on the shroud, it's basically supposed to be because he was resurrected and there was so much energy put into it or something that I'm not sure the real story, the full story, but we're going to watch this video. You guys can let us know if you're skeptical, if you believe it, if you don't believe it. Let's just look at it with and see what happens. So find somewhere comfortable to sit and watch, and let's get right into it.
Because there's going to be a certain percentage of people right now that have their hackles up because someone might be insinuating that maybe all this Jesus stuff is not legit. And that's not what anybody's saying. What we're saying is,
for centuries, the Shroud of Turin has been one of the most revered yet controversial religious relics in existence. The ancient linen cloth bearing the faint, haunting imprint of a crucified man has inspired equal amounts of faith and skepticism. But what if new scientific evidence uncovered mind-bending truths that challenged everything we thought we knew about this shrouded artifact's origins? Even skeptics like Joe Rogan have been stunned by findings that defy explanation. Encoded 3D data, predating modern imaging, particles tracing the shroud to 1st century Jerusalem, and an imprint that could only have been seared by a supernatural radiance. How is that even possible? Rogan exclaimed. So, was the shroud an elaborate forgery, or the miraculously self-encoded burial shroud of the resurrected Christ? The astounding revelations ahead may challenge everything you know. Chapter 1, the most interesting religious artifact in the world. For the uninitiated, the Shroud of Turin is a centuries-old linen cloth bearing an eerily lifelike image of a crucified man. This faint yet haunting imprint has sparked fervent debate. Are we looking at the actual burial shroud that wrapped the body of Jesus Christ after his agonizing crucifixion, or an elaborate medieval forgery, an ingenious relic constructed to dupe the pious? The controversy has raged for decades, with each side presenting formidable evidence to support their claims. In 1988, radiocarbon dating results seemed to deliver a fatal blow to the shroud's authenticity, suggesting it originated in the 13th or 14th century rather than 1st century Judea. However, shroud advocates were quick to argue that environmental contamination and other factors may have skewed those dates inexorably. In recent years, a tidal wave of new cutting-edge evidence has turned the debate on its head and left even die-hard skeptics scratching their heads. Rigorous analyses of pollen grains, DNA particles, and other debris extracted from the shroud's weave point unmistakably to an origin in the ancient territory of the Holy Land, precisely where and when Jesus lived, died, and according to scripture was resurrected. But the truly jaw-dropping revelation came from innovative digital analysis techniques that examined the shroud's faint body image in unprecedented detail. Incredibly, these studies discovered that the ghostly imprint encodes accurate three-dimensional spatial data about the body's shape, the precise depths of bloodstains, wounds, and other grievous injuries. How could a medieval forger, operating centuries before photography or digital imaging tech were invented, conceivably imprint such anatomically precise 3D data into a simple piece of cloth? Could it be that this ancient linen isn't just an ordinary archaeological artifact, but a semi-fossilized marker of one of the most significant events in human history, the death, burial, and fabled resurrection of Christ as depicted in the Gospels? Or was the Shroud of Turin merely an ingenious medieval con job rendered by craftsmen operating at the dizzying heights of human ingenuity and skill? Well, here's where things get shocking. Chapter 2, Joe Rogan's mind is blown. On a recent episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, the typically skeptical host was floored as Shroud researcher Barry Schwartz methodically laid out the bizarre new evidence surrounding the Shroud of Turin. Schwartz was a member of the landmark 1978 STURP team that conducted the first comprehensive scientific analysis of the enigmatic relic. Rogan began the interview firmly entrenched in his doubter's stance, stating he'd always thought it was some kind of hoax or a very old piece of artwork from the Middle Ages. After all, the Shroud's famous negative image of a crucified man had long been dismissed by skeptics as an elaborate forgery conjured up by clever medieval con artists looking to dupe the pious and credulous. However, as Schwartz unpacked the recent wave of scientific findings surrounding the Shroud's origins and properties, even Joe's trademark cynicism and penchant for rational explanations gradually melted away. It became increasingly apparent that the strange artifact simply could not be accounted for through conventional logic or understanding. Rogan exclaimed upon learning about the 3D encoded data inexplicably embedded in the Shroud's faint body image. However, somehow, medieval forgers from 700 years ago had managed to imprint accurate three-dimensional information into the cloth's discolored fibers, precise spatial data allowing scientists to extract and render anatomically accurate 3D models complete with realistic depths for the blood, wounds, and other grievous bodily features. How in the hell could medieval forgers encode 3D data before photography or any kind of imaging technology even existed? Rogan asked with audible bewilderment. That should have been impossible based on the scientific understanding and textile capabilities of that era. Schwartz agreed it defied all rational explanations by conventional standards. Yet, the evidence spoke for itself. The ghostly imprint contains codes and spatial dimensions that simply should not have been possible for anyone from that period to produce, no matter their ingenuity. Schwartz went on to explain that this 3D encoding was first discovered in the 1970s by researchers like Dr. Eric Jumper and John Jackson from the STURP team. Using cutting-edge computer science techniques of the era, they were able to extract startlingly accurate 3D reliefs and models from the Shroud's negative imprint alone. The finding was groundbreaking and remains one of the Shroud's most inexplicable properties to this day. But as mind-bending as that factoid was, the evidence only continued mounting to even more incomprehensible heights. Schwartz then brought up the recent DNA analysis that traced organic particles like ancient pollen grains back to precise geographic locations spanning Jerusalem, the surrounding Mediterranean region, ancient Middle Eastern trade routes, and eventually to the Shroud's final resting place in Italy after a long, winding journey through the centuries. So these medieval forgers somehow had access to materials and resources from all across the ancient world, including the Holy Land itself where Jesus lived? Rogan asked incredulously. And they just happened to get every single forensic detail pitch perfect to what we'd expect from a genuine 1st century Judaic burial shroud? Schwartz pointed out that the specific pollen types and disbursement patterns precisely matched charts of flora prevalent in the Jerusalem area during the March-April timeframe, right when Jesus Christ's crucifixion and burial are believed to have occurred according to the Gospels. Inexplicably, these medieval Europeans seem to have possessed knowledge of obscure botanical and environmental details specific to that narrow window of the 1st century Judea. There is something really important that I forgot to mention. Chapter 3, Evidence that Defies All Explanation. If the preceding revelations about the Shroud's anatomical and archaeological accuracies didn't already stretch the limits of plausibility far enough, Schwartz then got to what may be the most earth-shattering, paradigm-shattering evidence of all time. According to the researcher, new non-destructive dating tests like wide-angle X-ray scattering have conclusively confirmed the Shroud's 1st century origins while also detecting microscopic particles of soil and mineral compounds that are unique only to the ancient Jerusalem area. In other words, this strange artifact definitively existed in that specific location over 2,000 years ago, corresponding precisely to the time and place where Jesus Christ was crucified, buried and resurrected according to the biblical Gospels. The Shroud's intimate connection to the 1st century Judea appeared indisputable. But that's just the tip of the insanity iceberg, Schwartz proclaimed, his voice taking on a tone of bewildered awe. According to multiple comprehensive studies conducted by pioneering research teams in Italy, the actual physics process by which the Shroud's uncanny body image was created has now been at least partially deduced and understood, and the implications are nothing short of shattering our conventional scientific worldview. Based on granular analysis of the image's bizarre coloration properties and how the discolored imprint penetrated through all underlying microlayers of the clot's fibrous material in an embedded photonic manner, researchers converged on an astonishing conclusion. The shroud's body image could only have been formed by a massive, instantaneous burst of vacuum ultraviolet light radiation, a searing wave of electromagnetic energy so intense it registered between 4 billion to 34 trillion watts of power. Schwartz acknowledged that on its surface, the assertion did indeed sound utterly preposterous, stretching the limits of paradigms and shattering our conventional frameworks of understanding the physical world. After all, the energy outputs hypothesized far exceeded the capabilities of any external source of electromagnetic radiation known to modern science and technology by many orders of magnitude. There was quite literally no precedent for this sort of phenomenon in the historical record. And yet, exhaustive analysis across multiple independent research initiatives had consistently ruled out any other causal mechanism for the shroud image's embedded stained properties. The evidence seemed to point in this solitary direction, regardless of how outlandish and against the grain of accepted physics it may seem. Furthermore, the hypothesized radiation emission profile, a massively powerful yet transitory oscillating burst occurring on the order of nanoseconds, matched the absence of any heat or scorching effects on the linen cloth itself. So in essence, this strange new evidence seemed to suggest that the ghostly imprinted image was quite literally seared or stamped into the shroud's fibers by an inexplicable supernatural radiant event originating from within the enshrouded body. A scenario that aligned in an eerie, cosmic sort of way with the biblical account of that same body, the crucified remains of Jesus of Nazareth, undergoing an earth-shattering metaphysical transformation and resurrection some 2,000 years ago. As Schwartz bluntly stated, this meant the Shroud of Turin was potentially much more than a mere archaeological curiosity or religious relic. It could quite literally represent a tangible embedded marker and residue imprint from that seismic resurrection event itself, a miraculous photonegative seared by the sheer magnitude of metaphysical energies involved, energies beyond the current comprehension of science to adequately measure or explain. But let's take a pause for a moment because things are about to take a surprising turn. Chapter 4, there's something strange on here. Even in light of these astounding new findings, the centuries-old shroud debate rages on as fierce as ever. Hardcore skeptics argue that apparent medieval limitations simply reflect gaps in our modern knowledge for the technical capabilities of that era. For example, Professor Nicholas Allen proposed that the 3D encoded image could have been created through sophisticated photochemical projection techniques like the camera obscura, which may have been passed down from ancient Greek or Roman scholars. Other critics counter that the forensic evidence hinges on interpretation, assortments about origins based on trace particles, or patterns being inherently circumstantial. They question whether DNA, pollen, or bloodstain patterns exclusively point to 1st century Palestine as opposed to elsewhere around the ancient Mediterranean world. Amidst the squabbling, both sides begrudgingly agree on one thing: the Turin Shroud remains one of the most maddeningly enigmatic relics of archaeological study. No one has been able to convincingly recreate or explain all of its bizarre properties through natural art techniques alone. Yet the 1998 carbon dating stubbornly persists as an obstacle shroud proponents can't easily dismiss. Will this strange new wave of evidence finally sway the consensus of high-profile skeptics like Joe Rogan, or will the shroud remain forever mired in tantalizing yet perpetually inconclusive mystery, inspiring endless debate like so many religious artifacts before it? One factor often overlooked in the shroud debate is its profound personal impact on many who have studied it closely. While the evidence remains open to interpretation, the sheer weight and strangeness of the accumulated data points have shaken more than a few former skeptics to their core. Barry Schwartz himself was once a cynical non-believer before his direct involvement with STEP's pioneering.
Okay. Now, I'm watching this. I don't really know what to think one way or the other, Kelly. I mean, it looks like something that it looks like it could be real.
Yeah.
But they also do make a lot of leaps and bounds and basically saying like saying, oh, the pollen is from Jerusalem. That's why there's ancient pollen grains that are only in first century Jerusalem. It's like, so, and they're saying, how would they have access to this pollen and all this stuff? It's like, well, why can't the shroud be real, but the image be fake?
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, why can't the artifact be from that time period,
Mm-hmm.
but the image just not be real? So if you're in the
Fair point.
13th, 14th century,
Yeah.
why couldn't, and you had a bunch of money, why couldn't you just say, hey, just get me one of these burial cloths from that time in Jerusalem, if you're a king or something, and let's make something really cool that'll
Yeah.
give people an idea, because it looks exactly like the image. That's what gets me. It looks exactly like the image of the person that's modeled after the white man, the king.
Yeah.
So it's like he literally looks just like a white person. We know Jesus wasn't white. So, I mean, it's possible that he could be Middle Eastern, but with how it looks. But to me,
No, yeah.
I just don't know. What do you think, Kelly?
I think that's a really, really valid point for sure. And I agree. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, it could be, as of right now, I'm like, probably more leaning towards it's not. But again, it does, when God makes a miracle, it's like, if he's going to make a miracle, he wants it to be recognizable, right?
Yeah, like there's no doubt.
Yeah, that. And you could say that at the time or whatever, this would be the image of him that would be recognizable. Like maybe if it was his true image, people wouldn't recognize it as Jesus. So it was like by making the image look like what people put out as image of Jesus, people recognize that it's meant to be him, a miracle or whatever. But also at the same time, I mean, it is interesting that it is what is it called? What the cloth is called?
The shroud.
Shroud, something that's used for burying bodies. But
I mean, look at this. This just says AI replicates the face. I mean, come on, guys.
yeah,
I mean, let's just be real.
that's like
this
the
is
stereotypical.
this is a Anglo-Saxon, man from Europe, dude. This is not someone who's born in Jerusalem, in the first century. Like that's just not. This literally looks like Jared Leto.
Leto.
Yeah, like that's what it looks like, dude. It looks like, so.
No, Hank, that was a good point. I didn't think of that, but I was like, my senses are like, I don't know. But
Yeah.
what you said, I think does make sense, honestly. Like
Because-
someone later on did it.
Because they don't know how a lot of things are done. So,
Yeah.
and I was wondering, like, when did they find it and where was it when they found
Yeah,
it?
like
So, like, what year did they find the Shroud of Turin?
Who found it?
Yeah.
Why did they find it?
I'm going to find out really quick. Because it's like... So it was first publicly recorded in 1354 when a French knight named displayed it in France. However, its origins before that are uncertain. So they don't even know where it came from. That's the thing. So,
No,
yeah,
no.
that's just... So, let us know what you guys think about that,
Yes.
guys. It's interesting for sure, but I'm not
Yeah.
fully sold on it. So thank you guys for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for liking
Thank
the video,
you.
commenting, and sharing it. And thank you to everybody that donates, guys. We need it more than you realize.
Thank you,
Every
everyone.
cent counts. We love you, and we'll see you in,
In
the next video.
video.